Being in and around the trees, just in a physical way, after being around power plants, they gave me a lot of solace and comfort and renewal in a sense. It's a lot more pleasurable to be around a tree than a power plant. After American Power, I wanted to make a work that was closer to my home place. So it was a chance to think about the city and to not travel so far afield. But also, I wanted to make a work in the simple sense that was more about honoring and celebrating a subject and less of a lament, which is what I felt American Power came to be. The project is encompassing the 5 boroughs. So it wasn't just Manhattan, which is where I live, my home place. It was Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island. So in moving out to all these boroughs and doing extensive research and also thinking about the history of New York since it's been settled over the last 300 plus years, it came to my understanding that more than half of our trees are not native trees. They're immigrant trees. In fact, I think a cutting from the Weeping Beech from Belgium was brought back in the 19th century through a nursery owner named Samuel Parsons, who had a very burgeoning nursery in Queens, which was then mostly farmlands. And the original tree was planted in Queens, and then that tree, was then spawned other trees, first in the New York area, and then, that tree's all over North America now. One reason that I chose black and white was that I didn't want those punctuating elements, the street lights, the brightly colored park bench, the red fire hydrant, the person walking down the street with a fluorescent red jacket, to become distractions. And at the same time, I wanted to be able to potentially include those relevant but secondary details. Once I decided to work on with black and white as a medium, I decided to use an 8x10 camera, so that meant I shot film. There's no 8x, if you shoot an 8x10, the only other way would be to do a multiple digital capture, and I'm interested in making a single capture, not making this kind of construction. I did some testing in the printmaking, and I realized that there was a kind of resonance and depth, tonal range, quality, and detail that was very drawing-like with the analog optical prints from a large format black and white negative, and there's still paper being produced and masterful printers. So I chose that method to work analog because I preferred the way the prints looked. They're not landscape pictures. They, in some sense, they were not intended as in a premeditated way as portraits, but I think they became. I think my engagement with them on an individual basis as singular trees brought me to a place where they have certain qualities that are portrait-like. They have certain. They take on a certain persona. Not that I wanted to personify them, but that I wanted to respect them as their own, for their own qualities, their own character. And so I think in looking at them that way, some of that comes forward. Maybe there are some metaphorical associations, in particular in New York, with what it takes to endure in the climate of a very urbanized landscape like New York. I think when I can see it past the infatuation phase, when I can let go of all the expectations that I place on it to work and to sing in its way and be transcendent and give it some time just to sort of become its own thing and really, in a way, separate itself from me. And then when I can see it as something that I still feel a kind of deep connection to, but maybe less possession of. The ego is, it's necessary to, in some way, to fuel the kind of motivation that it takes, the insanity to be an artist, to make work and so on. But in the end, it's something you have to, I think, to work very hard to keep in check. I've never said it quite like that before, but I think that there's something there. So it just takes time. I could easily get stuck in all the conflicting ways of thinking about how to proceed. But when I turn to my intuition, I enable myself to trust my instinct and rely on a kind of refined sort of visual acuity, but at the same time a kind of empathetic connection to the tree. And at the same time, it's taking place, intuition, in conjunction with a kind of critical reflection. And sometimes the difference between what is working and what isn't working is very subtle and not even explainable in verbal terms. So I think there's something to be said about the challenge of what it takes to make a picture that's about something that's seemingly simple and in fact is not, and to allow it to be expansive. Being around these trees, many of which have lived for hundreds of years and will live beyond me, that itself is kind of humbling, because it makes clear just how vulnerable, but also how human I am, we are,